Last night, this is hard to believe actually, the National Union of Students voted to expel the Union of Jewish Students. I mean, quite unbelievable that it happened. Even more unbelievable how little coverage that story has had today across the breadth.
Greetings one and all, Holy Fridays, here in the Holy Land, the holy city of Shechem, Elon Moreh, holy Beit Knesset here, beautiful one, Od Yosef Chai. Once again, our class, as always, for the sake of heaven, to bring out the divine presence from the exile, to improve ourselves, even one little step to improve ourselves. And as always, a gratitude call out to the sponsor of our channel, Mike Gazovsky, with all of his beautiful work that he does in the North and South, volunteer work, and saving Jews all over the world. We should be at his heels. We should have the merit that he has at his heels. So keep up the great work, Mike, and also to the great blog, Tomer Devora. Check it out. It's about the only blog that's really worth reading. To our cameraman from Elon Moreh, homegrown, former student of mine. Yeah, let's hear it from him. Elchanan Gilboa, behind the scenes here. Okay, today's class, it's really a continuation, but I like to call it different names because it had different angles. So, Jew hatred, flood. The land of Israel is the ark. Jew hatred, flood, question mark, the land of Israel is that ark. Okay. How do we look? How do we look at ourselves outside the land of Israel? Do we look at ourselves as temporary residents or permanent fixtures outside the land of Israel? So, in an amazing commentary named Kli Yakar. Kli Yakar, amazing. When he was young, he almost died. And he accepted upon himself an oath that if God would save him from the disease that he had, he would write a commentary on the Torah. We merit to have his commentary, the Kli Yakar. So, I have it here in English. Here we go. Here's the verse. The verse is in Genesis 47:27. The Jewish people settled in the land of Egypt in the region of Goshen. They acquired property in it and were fruitful and multiplied greatly. Listen to the Torah commentator, the Kli Yakar, had to say. This verse, although it appears to be a positive statement, is really incriminating the Jewish people. God decreed that your seed shall be sojourners, temporary residents in the diaspora. But they, the Jewish people who settled in Egypt, wanted to become permanent residents there. Thus, the verse criticizes this settlement outside the land of Israel because they desired to acquire property and remained in a land that was not theirs. In the beginning, they did not intend to settle down in a permanent way, but rather to live like temporary dwellers. However, they changed their minds. They became so entrenched there in Egypt, they did not want to leave until God forced them out with a strong hand. And those who refused to leave Egypt died in the 3 days of darkness. Amazing. The Jewish people come down to Egypt. They look at themselves as temporary. We're here for a short time. I have an amazing story. one of my trips back to the States, I visited a very close friend of mine, and I came over to his house somewhere in New York, and there was no place to sit. I said, don't you have a couch here? Or he says, no. He says, we don't want to become permanent here. We don't want to become permanent here outside the land of Israel. We want to return to Israel. So therefore, sit on the floor. That's what we did. Me and my wife, we sat on the floor. So, unfortunately, folks, that was a tremendous attitude. That was a correct attitude. However, believe it or not, I'm not going to tell you how many years down the pipe we are, but it's a few decades. The bro is still there. I can't give a better example of what happened to the Jewish people in Egypt. They came down there with the proper attitude. Yes, we do not want to settle here. We want to look at ourselves in temporary. We're not going to get any, we're going to get third hand-me-downs, clothes, hand-me-down furniture. We ain't here for good. We ain't here to stay. However, that changed. 80% did not want to leave. Hundreds of years later, 210 years later, they did not want to leave. Amazing. But that's not it. That's not all. This source, I just learned last week. The first one that I just gave you, the Kli Yakar, that I'm familiar many years. However, this one was new to me. Same Kli Yakar. However, it was in last week's portion, Acharei Mot, Leviticus 18, chapter 18, verse 3. Listen to this amazing take. Like the actions of the Egyptians that you live, this is the verse. This is not the commentary of the Kli Yakar yet. Like the actions of the Egyptians that you lived there, do not copy. And the actions of the Canaanites, do not follow. Okay, got it. Do not follow in the paths of the Canaanites and follow in the paths of the Egyptians. Got it. Very interesting. The verse uses the word settle. Settle. The Kli Yakar commentary picks up on this word, where he explained to us that the Jewish people, when Jacob came down, they had the proper intention of being only temporary. But then it changed as the years went by. So he grabs onto this word and to this concept. Listen what he says. In Egypt, according to the Kli Yakar, the commentary, the prohibition for eternity is, do not make the same mistake Jews made after descending into Egypt. This is a lesson for all generations, for all times, the Kli Yakar says. First they came down to Egypt as strangers and looked upon themselves as temporary residents. When things improved for them economically and socially, they switched their outlook and they looked at themselves as residents, permanent fixtures in Egypt. Thus, at that point, God turned the respect and admiration that the Egyptians had towards the Jewish people into hatred. When the Jew begins to feel at home in the exile outside the land of Israel, it's only a matter of time. The respect and the love that was given to the Jewish people at the beginning, when they had the correct attitude, we're here temporary, we're not digging in, it switches, it changes. So too, the Kli Yakar continues, do not copy the deeds of the Jews in Egypt and those that left Egypt that despised the land of Israel. So we have certain Jews in Egypt that despised the land of Israel and did not want to leave Egypt. We have Jews that left Egypt, but eventually turned into despisers of the land of Israel. So that is what the verse is coming to tell us. Do not follow in the footsteps of the Egyptians and the Canaanites. We're not talking about the Canaanites, we're not talking about the Egyptians. We're talking about the Jews in Egypt, the Jews roaming the nations of the world, what not to make, what mistakes not to make, and our attitude towards coming to the land of Israel. That's what we're talking about. Moving right along, the Shla Kadosh, Rav Yeshayahu Horowitz, at the end of Tractate Sukkah, in his commentary Torah Or, my heart would burn whenever I would hear about Jews building gigantic complexes. They are turning themselves into permanent fixtures in an impure land. They build as if they, their children, grandchildren, will be permanently living there. They have taken their minds off of redemption. Harsh words. Unfortunately, go to religious communities outside the land of Israel. Look at the great homes many of them live. Look at the institutions. It would seem like we are here for ourselves, for our children and our grandchildren, and the beat goes on. The heart of the Shlah HaKadosh would burn when he saw these gigantic homes, complexes going up. In the exile, we were taking our minds off redemption. The Givat Shaul, name of his book. Rabbi Shaul Mortira. He lived 400 years ago. I summarize his book. Number 1. As long as the Jews viewed themselves as strangers and guests in Egypt, the nations did not harm them. The next generation too. The next generation forgot this principle when they became wealthy and successful and began dressing fancier than the upper echelons of society. They desired to be ministers in the government or important dignitaries. 3. Women began adorning themselves with the finest jewelry and wardrobe. 4. The Jews began building fancy homes and becoming obsessed with gourmet food. I know that there are cities that boast how many restaurants, kosher restaurants they have. They chose to ride in the fanciest of chariots. They didn't have Telstar back then. This all of the above, led to their demise and expulsion amongst the nations. That, look it up, pages 91 to 94. It's time we look in the mirror, look at ourselves. The Shlah HaKadosh, the Givat Shaul, could he be talking about us? Could he be talking about us Jews, us religious Jews outside the land of Israel? Could it just be? The brother Rabbi Chaim, the son of Bitzalel, the brother of the famous Maharal, in his book, commentary, Sefer HaChaim, page 112, I summarize. He asks a tremendous question, a terrifying question. Why has the exile carried on so long? We should all be asking ourselves that question. One of the reasons is we have begun to feel like citizens in the countries that we live. We build gigantic and expensive homes outside of Israel, clearly showing signs of despair from being redeemed. Our sages tell us that those that live outside the land of Israel are likened to people with no God. Who were they speaking about? And the answer of Rabbi Chaim, the brother of the Maharal, who are they speaking about when they said they have no God? To those that claim, this is my home and this is where I will be buried. Rabbi Yaakov Emden lived in the 1600s. In his prayer book, Beit El, I translate, we imagine that since we live in peace outside the land of Israel, we have already found another land of Israel and Jerusalem, like the first. This is the reason why the Jewish people dwelling in peace and great honor in Spain and other countries during the exile were beset by so much misfortune and then banished from Spain until no remnant of the Jews remained there. Paragraph 6. Rabbi Emden continues, it seems to me, in our present peaceful existence outside the land of Israel, that we have found another land of Israel in Jerusalem. This, to me, is the greatest, deepest, and most obvious and direct cause of all the awesome, frightening, monstrous, unimaginable destruction that we have experienced in the diaspora. Paragraph 13. Folks, tears come to my eyes reading this. What has happened to us? Where the hell are we? How have we sunk so low? Sad, extremely sad. Meshech Chochmah, who ordained Rabbi Amiel, Rabbi Meir Simcha of Dvinsk, passed away in 1926. Some call him the prophet of the Holocaust. Listen to his words. If the Jew will forget his origin and true identity and consider himself a full-fledged citizen of the country of his exile, a full-fledged citizen, if he thinks that Berlin is Jerusalem, fill in the blanks, the Bronx, Borough Park, Lakewood, then a raging storm will uproot him by his trunk. The tempest will arise and spread its roaring waves and swallow and destroy and flood forth without pity. Then he will know that he is a stranger. The Meshech Chochmah, gives us an amazing insight. God gives us 100 to 200 years of tranquility, relative tranquility, in the lands of exile. Not always, many times. And then, when a Jew settles in, when a Jew forgets that he is a temporary resident, hell breaks out. Listen to this. Holy Chafetz Chaim, Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan, passed away the end of September 1933. May his name be erased. Hitler rose to power January, same year, January 1933. 8-month difference. The Chafetz Chaim passed away 8 months after the rise to power of, may his name be erased, Hitler. The Chafetz Chaim was asked by a head of a yeshiva, a Torah seminary, what will be for the Jews of Poland and Germany? Will they be destroyed, God forbid? An amazing question. 1933. This can be found in the commentary of the Chafetz Chaim on the Torah. Genesis chapter 32, verse 9. Check it out. The Chafetz Chaim replied, that will not be. The Jewish people will not be destroyed. We learn with the face-off between Esav and Jacob. Jacob replies, I will set up 2 camps. Why 2 camps? Because if Esav destroys 1 camp, if the nations destroy 1 camp, the 2nd camp will be saved. The head of the seminary continued with another question. If, God forbid, Hitler succeeds in destroying European Jews, where will the remnant be saved? The Chafetz Chaim just explained. We learn from Jacob the laws of exile. And we see that there will be a remnant, even if Esav, even if the nations come and destroy 1 pocket, 1 group, 1 nation, the other group will survive. But where will that remnant, where will that refugee be? The Chafetz Chaim replied, that too is written in our prophets. Obadiah, chapter 1, verse 17. On the Mount of Zion, they will find refuge. That was 10 years before the beginning of Hitler's downfall, which took place at the gates of the land of Israel, south, Elamin, the fall of Germany. Prophetic Chafetz Chaim, Rabbi Yehuda Alkalai. People look at Herzl, Theodor Herzl, as the modern-day seer of the state of Israel. Not so. Just like, unfortunately, in Israel, the establishment many times wants us to believe that the people that came to the land of Israel, the first people that came to the land of Israel in groups, were secular. Not so. They were, of course, all religious. So, the true seer of the state of Israel was a tremendous Torah giant from Bosnia, Rabbi Yehuda Alkalai. 50 years. He taught The grandfather of Herzl was one of his students. Amazing, no? It must have rubbed off on Herzl. Grandfather learned by Rabbi Yehuda Alkalai, who eventually, of course, came to the land of Israel. He passed away in 1878, 140 some years ago. This was his message to Jews outside the land of Israel. Leave your places of residence to go to the land of Israel. All your material efforts outside of Israel are in vain. All your material efforts are in vain. This might seem shocking, but believe it or not, those are the words of our sages. The blessings, okay, there is no real blessing of resources outside the land of Israel. There might be temporary benefit, but not continuous benefit. So those are the words of our sages. The famous Rabbi Meir Shapira, the head of the yeshiva of Chachmei Lublin, said, I quote, "There is no confidence in what we are building here in the exile. There's no confidence that it will remain." Why? Why is there a constant wave of Jew hatred? Why does God rock the boat? Remember that song, Don't Rock the Boat? Why is God rocking the boat? We would like that God, don't rock the boat, don't rock the boat. But that's not life. That's not life. We have waves of anti-Semitism. Why is that? If we look at the words of our sages, Breshit Rabbah, chapter 33, paragraph 6, Noah sends the dove to check to see if it's safe outside of the ark, if there is place that is not flooded, where we could exit, leave the ark. The dove finds no resting place and returns to the ark. Our sages learn from the sending of the dove by Noah, coming back because there is no resting place, and leaving because the dove has found a resting place. What does that teach us for generations? The eternal lesson is the following. Our sages tell us, check it out. The dove represents the people of Israel. If they were able to find rest outside the land of Israel, tranquility, they would never return to the land of Israel. So therefore, God rocks the boat. God rocks the boat, brings in waves and waves of anti-Semitism. Are we able to go for the early detection, or do we wait one more inning, one more round, and it's possibly too late? Moving right along. Why is this constant wave of anti-Semitism? What is the goal? What is the lesson? What is the message of God here? 8 different places. The holy. Ema banim smecha. Rav Yisachar Teichtel, one of the leading rabbis of Hungary, was murdered in the Holocaust. He wrote a tremendous book with thousands of sources, thousands, without any books. He knew everything by heart. Amazing. In his beginning years, decades, like most in his area, he was anti-Zionist, tremendously anti-Zionist. When the Holocaust hit, he began to relearn the subject of the land of Israel, of redemption. And he did a 360 change. In his book, no less than 8 places. He tells us. I'll read one of them, one of the 8 places. If the redemption were, this is on page 67. If the redemption were to occur in good, peaceful times when quiet prevailed among people, many of our Jewish brethren would not want to leave the exile. For what? What would they be lacking there? Therefore, all of these calamities have come upon us in order to awaken us to return to our Holy Land. I'm going to read it one more time. Clear out, clean your ears. Get those Q-tips ready to go. All these calamities have come upon us in order to awaken us to return to our Holy Land. Check it out in other places, page 38, 82, 145 to 144 to 145, pages 209 to 210, page 211, page 214, 282, and 299. In 8 different places, Rabbi Teichel tells us the reason why God afflicts us with all types of tragedies and calamities is to remind us to come home to the land of Israel. We've heard of the Stockholm Syndrome, yes? The Patty Hearst Syndrome. Well, welcome to the worms, or if we were in German, Worms. Pardon my accent. The Worms Syndrome in Germany. Listen to this syndrome. In the book by Rabbi Yechiel Halperin, he lived in Eastern Europe. In 1746, almost 300 years ago, he wrote a book, actually a few volumes, called Seder Hadorot. Look it up on page 126. He quotes a Jewish law commentator called the Sma. The Sma is Sefer, the book of Mirat Einayim. It's a commentary on Jewish law of Choshen Mishpat, Code of Jewish Law of Choshen Mishpat. He quotes him, the Seder Rabbi Alperin. They both lived at the same period of time. Both Rabbi Alperin, who wrote Sefer Hadorot, and the Sma, who was Rabbi Meir Ta'omim. Rabbi Meir Ta'omim. During the second, I quote, during the Second Temple period, Ezra the scribe sent letters to every diaspora community demanding they fulfill God's words and return to the land of Israel. Can you imagine this? Ezra the scribe himself is sending out these telegrams, these messages. Okay, now we've done 70 years in the exile of Babylonia. It's time to come home. One city, Vermeiza, later to become Worms, Germany, responded with an official dispatch back to Ezra. Listen to what they said. You may dwell in the great Jerusalem. However, we will remain here in our little Jerusalem. How many places have Jews coined the phrase where they lived, little Jerusalem or New Jerusalem? I remember when I was in New York, I had to stop to eat something. There was a pizza place called New Jerusalem. Vermeiza's Jews at that time were extremely prosperous and prominent, but gradually began to lose their wealth and status and started to suffer from prejudice legislation. This particular city suffered more acutely throughout the ages from anti-Semitic persecution than others. It seems to have been cursed. An amazing, once again, this was written 300 years ago, talking about an incident 2,000 years ago. Why have Jewish communities in Germany suffered so much? Their refusal. Not only their refusal to come back to the land of Israel, but spitting in the face of the land of Israel. You may dwell in the great Jerusalem. We will remain here in our little Jerusalem. Spitting in the face of the land of Israel. Not good. Very dangerous. If you're still on your chairs, folks, you should really be flying off them. Okay, so that's our offering for today. God willing, don't touch that channel. We shall return for the finale with God's help next week. Till then, stay safe.